Hello, hello, people. So, it's 4 a.m. in the UK, and I'm well aware that this one is very spontaneous. Only really given about 3 or 4 hours notice, so no one shows up. Lesson learned. Um, but it has been a while since I've done a live stream, so please, yeah, if you are online, I see one person online. I have an idea who that may be. But if you want to leave a comment, the way this usually works is people leave comments, I engage the comments, and it could be anything, absolutely anything. Nothing's off bounds. If it's something you want me to talk about, if you want me to clarify my position on something, absolutely anything. Maybe something I've said in one of my videos that you agree or disagree with. Um, I just want to be absolutely free and transparent. So the important thing though is I do have engagement. Otherwise, it's kind of pointless because it's different from a video where I'm talking. I'll see how this goes. My UK subscribers might wonder why I'm making one at this time. Well, the reason is that I have subscribers from around the world. Probably most of my subscribers are British, but I know there's people in the States, in Turkey, in Brazil. So if you're in a country that's maybe in a more social time zone, then please do comment. Um, I'm just going to kind of stand by. I won't talk too much because I prefer to save it for people actually viewing. But here it is. Here's a live stream. I think I'll give this 10 minutes at the most, depending on interaction. So, like I say, if you log in, please do participate. Leave a comment. Doesn't need to be something profound. It can be anything. Basic question, anything. Please do take part, though. That's important if you can. If you're kind of self-aware, if you're a bit shy, it doesn't need to be a really deep question. It can just be something basic. But it is important that I have participation. Otherwise, it defeats the purpose of engaging with subscribers. You may know that I've had to tread carefully with YouTube recently because a few weeks ago they sanctioned me, which was ridiculous. I hadn't broken any community guidelines. I hadn't shown any graphic content. I hadn't, shown any legal content. So it was all down to a big misunderstanding. And that's really frustrating that these big social media companies push people into a corner, and there's very little way to defend yourself. I mean, I launched an appeal and it was ignored. I got no email reply as they suggested would be the case. Um, so, Jolly, hello. Good to see someone online. You're in Canada, right? So that's what I was just talking about, time zones. So it's good that at least we have one person. So even if it's just us, it's better than nothing. Welcome, welcome. Hope you're well. What I'm going to do, Sloth, is I mean, you're welcome to ask questions or anything like that, or just leave maybe a subject to discuss, like a suggestion. But I want to have ideally a minimum of 3 people to really make this work. I remember there was one live stream I'd done about a month ago, I guess, and I had something like 15 people commenting. That's a good number because it keeps me busy, keeps me on my feet. Obviously, it's 4 a.m. in the UK just after, so Canada it would be a more social hour, I guess. Just remind me, what city are you in, Sloth? Was it Calgary? Did I get that right? Or I think you did mention before, was it Alberta province? Alberta, yeah. Yeah, that's a good question regarding Australia and New Zealand. I should say something incidentally about COVID. I think it's a good subject to talk about because it's the subject. It's the one thing defining the world right now, really, more than anything else. But I'm kind of aware of, I mean, I'll talk about this, but YouTube did sanction me. on this subject because they misunderstood a title of my video. So, just as a disclaimer to YouTube, I'm not spreading fake news. I'm not contradicting any official medical guidelines because that's why you people, YouTube, that's why you sanctioned me before. I'm not doing that here. So, that's a disclaimer. Um, so yeah, Sloth, I know what you mean about Australia and New Zealand. I've mixed feelings about it actually. I mean, on one hand, they've got a very low number of cases, I mean, mortality, so it makes sense that they would want to keep it that way. On the other hand, hearing about an Australian government, state government, talking about sending in the military, it's a drastic step, and it is something you usually hear about in totalitarian states. So it just as a reminder of how much this pandemic has impacted the world. Actually, I got my second jab the other day, Moderna. The good side of that is that I got a free bus journey. The last time round, I had to pay for the ticket. For some reason, I went onto the bus. I was going to pay the ticket, and the bus driver, she just kind of nodded. She had two pet dogs with her, which was intriguing. But she just kind of nodded, and I got on, and the other people didn't pay either, and that was pretty decent because it was a good, let's say, 15-mile round journey. Um, and it was a purpose-built hospital, what we call in the UK Nightingale hospitals. In this case, actually, a former part of the Nissan plant. Nissan's a huge factory. They have the Nissan car company. They have a huge plant in my city. It kind of makes Sunderland the Detroit of the UK in a sense. Um, but anyway, what I'm driving at is I was talking to the nurse, older nurse, and I said that with more people vaccinated, the restrictions would be more of a moral and practical case for those restrictions to end. And she kind of felt that people should still wear masks. I don't know about that. I think with more people vaccinated, I think we should get rid of as many restrictions as possible. Um, my sympathies are with those advocating for freedoms of the anti-vax movement and rhetoric. End with the anti-vax movement and rhetoric. Yeah, I totally agree. I find it quite concerning, frankly, how otherwise intelligent people could make such irrational arguments, and they really go down a rabbit hole. I mean, it's I've got some insight into this narrative because I have a colleague, without going into too many details, who he's very much of that school of thought, and I just think it must be sad to be that cynical, to genuinely believe that Bill Gates is trying to insert microchips into people. Um, in the UK, we have a nurse, I forget her name now, but she is a prominent anti vaxxer. Again, YouTube, I'm not advocating this, I'm doing the exact opposite. Sorry, Sloth, I'm just, this is exactly why YouTube sanctioned me before, because they thought I was an anti vaxxer, and I wasn't. I was doing the exact opposite. Um, that's the thing, isn't it? It's about a balance. Everyone's tired of the restrictions, and in Western democratic societies, we're not used to, having basic freedoms curtailed. But this is an exceptional situation. Having said that, this has been going on now for about a year and a half, and at some point we have to look at a return to normality of some sort. I mean, I think we need to learn from the pandemic in terms of how it's handled, in terms of how governments respond. But I've heard some people argue that, oh, well, there's nothing wrong with masks. We should just wear them indeterminately. That to me is Orwellian because for me, it's not like so much getting into that conspiracy theory type thing of it's all a government plot. I don't believe it is, but I personally don't like the masks. I find them very uncomfortable. I Maybe it's because I used to be a smoker, but I find it a bit hard to breathe in them. I just don't like them. And I think they need to go as soon as possible. But in the UK, we've been very successful for the most part in terms of the vaccination. But really, when we look at history, that literally untold millions of people have been saved by vaccinations. So I can understand people being wary. All I would say to anyone anywhere is, governments are not going to just recklessly throw something at the public without testing it rigorously first. Um, as for population control, they have to ask themselves why at this particular time, what's significant about 2020 for this to begin? If governments wanted to do that, would they have not done it earlier? I mean, the problem is they just every rational argument that you put, they will just put a question mark on it. You could show them official sources. Oh, but that's all part of the government. So really, it's very, very difficult to get a middle ground with people like this. In fact, the nurse I mentioned, one of the leading anti-vaxxers, her own son has spoken out against her and said, "Look, you can't reason with this mindset because everything you say, they will just say you're brainwashed by the government. They won't, and they like to say we do our own research, but anything that's official, they just don't trust. So it's their own research amounts to basically blogs on the deep web, or it's a very cynical way of looking at the world. And this is not to say that there hasn't been government cover-ups or there hasn't been corruption in the corridors of power, etc. I mean, we know, for example, from the Kennedy assassination, probably there was something in that. And that's the mainstream opinion now. It's not seen as like a sideline thing. But when it comes to pandemics, the idea that people would dismiss vaccines just offhand, of course, there'll be some side effects. I mean, when I had the second jab, I did feel a bit feverish that night. It wasn't very pleasant, and I had some pain in my arm. But anyway, I'm just rambling here. Uh, I imagine, Sloth, based on what you've said, you have a similar outlook. I'll shut up now because I'm just talking. Trudeau behaving like a woke troll, talking about having. Oh God, that wasn't for real, was it? I thought that was actually satire. Did he actually say that? My. I mean, I'm not surprised coming from Trudeau, but that's. I honestly, I must admit, when I saw that, it was on some Facebook post. I thought that was kind of a parody from right-wing critics or something, but I'm not overly surprised. Hello, Andrew. Welcome to the stream. A she covery from a she. Justin, really. I heard, by the way, in Canada, has he called a snap election? Is that true? I understand he's banking um, on the government's response to COVID there. So that's due for September. Is that right? I need to patch up on my Canadian politics, but I believe Mr. Singh is the main. He's not the Conservative leader. Is that right? He's the. Let me get this right. MPD. I need to patch up on my Canadian politics. To be honest. But certainly, it's always a gamble for a prime minister to throw a snap election. Certainly is in the UK. But I'll be watching that if it is September. We don't get huge coverage over here, but I'm always interested in what happens in Ottawa in that sense. I'm good, thank you, Andrew. Apart from my irregular sleeping pattern, I'm good. How are you? Um, Andrew, are you in Scotland by any chance? Forgive me, but I'm just going by your name. If so, that's two of us in the same time zone. Um, to be honest, I'm just pleased anyone's joined in. I didn't think I would get any viewers with this live stream because it was very spontaneous. I only scheduled it like 4 hours ago. So different from yeah, well, still in the same timeline. Um, I've always liked Birmingham. I don't know if I mentioned this before in one of my videos, but I studied in Wolverhampton, so I know the Midlands fairly well, although it's been a long time since I've been there. But I've always liked Birmingham. I like the think tank. I like the jewelry quarter. It's a city that I wouldn't rule out living in the future. I mean, I live in Sunderland, and it's a good place. And I'll certainly be living here for at least the next 5 years. But in the future I might relocate to a bigger place. And the good thing about Birmingham is it's a big city, but it's not London big. It's not overwhelming. So if you're in Calgary, right, or I think you mentioned you were in a smaller town outside. Sorry, you did say you're in Calgary. Calgary and Birmingham would be a similar size. So um, it's the thing about Canada. I mean, it's a similar thing with Australia. Both huge countries, and yet largely urban populations where people tend to live in the big cities. Yeah, that's the thing with Brum. I mean, it's how when we think of Heath Town and oh, sorry, Heath Town's Wolverhampton. Where is it? Begins with H. Handsworth, yeah. Nechells. I think some parts of Aston can be quite. They have reputations, but honestly, for a city of its size, I would say Birmingham's fairly safe. I mean, certainly its homicide rate, if we compare it to most American cities that are smaller, it's a pretty safe place. Incidentally, for anyone around the world, right now there's two of us, so slow from. Yeah, I mean, Britain's kind of a paradox, I think, because on one hand, we have a major problem with antisocial behaviour and some disgusting things happen in this country. Just young fathers being killed by yobs and things like this. But on the other hand, we have a pretty low homicide rate. If you look at international rankings, actually, the UK is in the bottom 20. We really are a pretty safe country in that sense. Um, Aston isn't as bad as it's made out to be. That's good to know. I don't know why I mentioned Aston actually, because I've always in Birmingham it's always Handsworth. How about Small Heath? Does Small Heath have a reputation? Or I know Handsworth certainly does because of its history of racial problems and Mitchell's. Alberta is considered a conservative province and all fairly maligned at times. Is that like socially conservative, or is it just that the Conservative Party, is it that the Tories have support there, or is it more like socially conservative? It's seen as, um, I mean, I'd imagine Calgary, like any big city, is cosmopolitan, so I can't imagine it's a case of being seen as inward looking. Having said that, I read a sort of novel set in Canada in the 30s, and the characters in that it was quite kind of socially conservative, and I think it was set in Alberta, like just in terms of things like extramarital relations, and it was sort of seen as quite religious and quite in that sense. But Small Heath can be rough, yeah, but not like Los Angeles or anything. Yeah, I don't think there's really anywhere in the UK like that. Maybe Moss Side in Manchester and parts of London. Definitely, I wouldn't. I'd be very cautious in. Glasgow used to be like that. Less so today. Less so today. I mean, every city in Britain. I imagine this is the same in Canada. Sloth is has certain areas that are controversial. I mean, even Sunderland, which is a small city, in this city, it would be places like, I mean, you guys probably won't have heard of these places, but if you just look up on a Google map, Pennywell, Southwick, and Hendon. Now, I'm in Hendon Ward, but I live in a pretty nice area. It's nice. It's a nice leafy area, Victorian houses. Yet only a few minutes away, I know there's drug addicts and some pretty rundown places. That's because Hendon's quite a big ward. It's like 12,000 people, and it's the whole sort of coastline part of Sunderland that's on this side. So sometimes even within one area, you have differences. I mean, if we take, for example, Brooklyn in New York City, a lot of people they think Brooklyn and tough. I'm not quite sure where that reputation comes from. It might be it's just kind of tough sounding, but Brooklyn's a borough of 2.5 million people, so it's a big, big area. And Brooklyn has nice leafy areas as well. So I've always found it's interesting about cities how perception develops over certain neighborhoods more than others. And sometimes a place that has a negative perception, they naturally want to shake that off. I mean, in Sunderland, I used to live in an area called the East End, which was pretty tough, but that was not really in a normal housing estate. It was an old area going back to the Georgian period. It's where the original port of Sunderland was. and it's actually the very first place in England where cholera arrived in the 1830s. Bread for the rich and guns for the poor. Yeah, that's an interesting. A lot can be said on that philosophy, I think. It's mostly poor businessmen trying to earn a living. So you're talking about like small business owners, Andrew? Is that what you mean? I've been hanging with lots of single folks from Facebook social groups, mainly in group settings. Doing this for much of summer, a lot of pub hanging. I did this in summer. So I guess the pubs there are open. Is that the case, Soph? Let me just grab a coffee here. Yeah, I mean, Sunderland is the same in the sense of like small heath. Sunderland's not a particularly prosperous city. And to be honest, this place can be a little bit depressing sometimes because we often have closed shops. You know, Sunderland's one of those places in the UK, a bit like maybe, I guess, Stockport, Cumbernauld in Scotland, um, Birkenhead, Blackpool to some extent. You know, these are places that Preston, Wolverhampton, they don't particularly enjoy a good reputation, but they all will have some redeeming feature. Now, in the case of Sunderland, I do like to kind of promote my city a bit. I'm from Belfast originally, as you guys may know, but um, basically I see Sunderland as my city because I've grown up here. It's kind of a mixed thing because where I live is a beautiful area. We've got wildlife, we have nice Victorian homes, but some of the city centre is a bit run down. I always think the telltale sign of a city with issues is if you have a lot of betting shops as opposed to normal shops. And Sunderland does have quite a few. It gives a slightly, um, how can I put it? Not seedy exactly, but sort of rundown, shabby look. Having said that, Sunderland has some beautiful spots. I mean, we've the beach, Roker Beach, is very, very picturesque, and you know you pay 1 million for a house there. Um, Calgary is fairly cool. I've lived here all my life, and I'm proud to have lived here. We have fantastic special needs, like autism resources and services, among the best in Canada. Isn't there also a famous rodeo in Calgary? Am I getting that right? I've heard there's a famous rodeo there. There used to be a lady in the church that I used to go to. She was from Calgary. Um, I remember once asking her a really stupid question. She had a top 10 University of Tea or something like that. I said, "Oh, you went to the University of Canada?" She said, "Nathan, we have more than one university in Canada." Ah, the Calgary Stampede. That's it. I think it's one of the most famous in North America, isn't it? Among rodeos. I'd love to see something like that, actually, like a genuine North American rodeo. I'd imagine there's some differences from the American and Canadian versions, but it would just be something cool to see, I reckon. Um, I've always had a good impression from Canadian cities because I guess much like German cities and Australian cities, they have a reputation for very high quality of living, you know, very clean, very high standards in that sense. But I'm sure they have their share of problems. I know in Canada, there's an issue with some Indian gangs, or you know, no offense to any Indians watching, but apparently there's a problem with some South Asian gangs, sort of rivalry between Sikhs, and I don't know if that's true. I know that's an issue in Vancouver. Also, some of the Mexican drug cartels have a presence in Vancouver and Toronto. That's my perception anyway. But yeah, I do love the look of Canadian cities, the skyscrapers, and they look very clean and they look like good places to live. Um, I don't know what the demonym for people of Calgary would be. Calgarians. I don't know what would be the thing there. Skiing trip. Yeah, I'd love to go skiing. It's something I've never done. I've been to Canada, but just Niagara Falls when I was 13. Like it was literally just over the border. That was amazing. Very included in the city, very multicultural and progressive. So far, I haven't had any work problems. Work problems. Yeah, this is the thing. You know, Canada sometimes has a reputation for being very woke and very politically correct, but I think it's much like America and Britain in the sense that a lot of common sense prevails. Um, if there's more because of Justin Trudeau. Yeah, that's my impression anyway. There's a famous skit from the film Anchorman, the comedy film, which shows the different news crews from around the world. If you guys have seen that, there's a funny skit where they show the BBC being quite snobby and looking down at the American outlets, but then there's a Canadian news crew. They apologise for every. So sorry. It's like tapping into this stereotype of Canadians being very polite. Um, like I said, I've been to Canada, but I'd like to go again. Like see some of the big cities. Um, Australia too. The only thing with Australia is so far, such a far distance to travel, and I sort of feel like I like the Aussies and I like Australia, but it's such a long way to go. I'd rather, if I'm going so far, experience a totally different culture, like Thailand or the Philippines, or traveling that far seems kind of I don't know. It's and the Australians, it's kind of like they're a Western culture. They are Australians. I mean, it's not. I don't mean to imply they are the same as British culture, but the difference is definitely not massive. Um, Canada obviously is a lot closer. By the way, does Calgary have any big rivalry with any other city, like Vancouver, for example? Um, or I guess it would be I don't know. Saskatoon's probably too small. Certainly in Britain, I mean, we have Newcastle and Sunderland, Glasgow and Edinburgh, Liverpool and Manchester. The Aussies like kangaroos. Yeah, mate, you can't put a roo on a barbie. That's my very bad Australian accent. Um, Flames versus Oilers. Yeah, I've heard of the Oilers. Flames. What city is that? Would that be? Oh, Edmonton. Edmonton, of course. Yeah, that's the city I was thinking of. Um, I remember I watched a film earlier this year, Nobody. It's kind of a violent action thriller. It was quite good, a bit silly at points. It went a bit over the top, but it was partly filmed in Winnipeg. And I knew it was meant to be set somewhere in the United States, but I'm thinking, well, actually, in the film, they didn't name the city, but I was thinking just by the look of it, it's either Minneapolis in the States or Winnipeg or Calgary. But the city was never explicitly named in the film. One Great City by a band called We Curfins. I'll check that out afterwards. I always like songs that name cities because I think it's good for the city. Its chorus says I hate Winnipeg. That could be a good party game, name songs with the city in the title. So I was listening to Billy Joel's New York State of Mind the other day. There is Philadelphia by Bruce Springsteen. Let's see, San Francisco Nights by, was it The Animals? They're just American cities. Um, London Calling by The Clash. Thinking of other British cities. Downtown, I guess it's meant to be Cardiff because Petula Clark, I think, was from Cardiff. Um, Come On You Reds, Manchester, but I don't know if Manchester's mentioned in the name. Yeah, that could be a good party trick. I tell you what, guys, it's just for fun. Let's think of as many songs as possible with cities somewhere in the lyrics or the name. So I've named a few there. Stranger in Moscow, Michael Jackson, Stranger in Moscow. Tokyo Girl by that Swedish group, Ace of Base. Let's see. There's probably loads of others. Manila. There's actually a song called Manila by a group called the Hot Dogs, popular in the 70s, a Filipino group, and it's quite a catchy song. Miami, Will Smith, will need to check that one out. I know, like the Fresh Prince theme, and I'll need to check that one out. Rasputin, Boney M. Ah, yes, the Moscow Chicks line. I remember that. That's a really quirky song because when you think about it, it's like a black group in Germany singing about a Russian mystic. It's definitely a memorable one. Birmingham. I don't know if there's any song with Birmingham in the name or in there. It must be somewhere, but um, Liverpool. Sure, there's songs of Liverpool in there. Has to be. And Paris is bound to be. Ah, I thought of one. Rotterdam by the Beautiful South. And that actually named several cities. It could be Liverpool or it could be Liverpool or Rotterdam. Du-du-du. No. Rome is mentioned. Liverpool's mentioned. Somewhere else mentioned in that song. Could be Rotterdam or anywhere. Liverpool or Rome. Because Rotterdam is anywhere. Du-du-du-du-du-du. Amsterdam. David Bowie had a song with Amsterdam in there somewhere. Um, this is gonna definitely I'll remember more when we finish. Let's see, Miami by Will Smith, One Great City by a band called the Weakerthans. Yeah, R.I.P. Bowie. I remember when he died. It was I was never a huge fan, if I'm being honest, but when I started looking up the stuff afterwards, the versatility, this is where I think great artists survive, where they have a versatile style, where they reinvent themselves. I mean, with Bowie, he had different periods, different eras, and I do like some of his stuff. Actually, just before this video, I was listening to Goodnight, Mr. Lawrence, or the theme tune from that. I know Bowie didn't perform it, but it was in that. China Girl was one of his. I'm trying to think if that named any cities. Shanghai. There's an old Chinese song from the 30s called In Shanghai. It's quite famous. But there's also been more updated songs about Shanghai, which is one of my favorite world cities. It's just massive, but it's got a real vibe about it. Um, Mumbai. There was also a song about Mumbai, formerly Bombay in India. Mumbai Mirajan, or Bombay Mirajan. He was using the old name. It's quite cheery. It's like do 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 Bombay in Hindi, so I'm not going to try and. But it's quite catchy. Oh, you pretty things. Who performs that, Andrew? I love L.A. by Randy Newman. Do 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 do. Chicago is bound to have. I think most big American cities will have lots of songs. Detroit, of course. Put your hands up for Detroit. Memphis, long distance information. Give me Memphis, Tennessee. Oh boy, okay. Check out that one. All the nightmares came today, and it looks as though they're here to stay. Hmm. I wonder if that song by Duran Duran, Rio, her name was Rio, and she wrote do 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 do, and she dances it. I wonder is that like a double entendre, like it's a woman's name that's also referring to Rio de Janeiro. I don't know. Sao Paulo. Don't know if there's any songs of Sao Paulo or Buenos Aires. Cosa Vita, Don't Cry for Me, Argentina. That was more the country. It could. It's an interesting one. I think that could be. Um. Yeah. Songs with cities in the name. Chuck Berry. Oh, you mean Bowie covered it from Chuck Berry? Thinking of other British cities, trying to think of Edinburgh. The Bay City Rollers were from Edinburgh, but I don't know. I think there's any songs of the city name in it. Um, Buckcherry. Ah, there's actually a band called Buckcherry. Ah, I'm with you. Thank you, Andrew. So that explains it. Memphis, Tennessee is a Chuck Berry tune. Yeah, it sounds about right because that's from the would be the 50s, I guess. Nashville. There was something in I think it was the 70s called the Nashville Sound, sort of a particular branch of country music. I know San Francisco's had a few songs named after it. San Francisco Nights, and there's a few others. I wonder some of the lesser known American cities, like maybe Indianapolis or uh, Columbus, Ohio, if they've had songs named after them. They probably have somewhere. Might well research this afterwards. Um, then you have emerging megacities like Jakarta, Kinshasa, and Dhaka, Lagos. Um, anyway, so guys, I'm going to wrap this one up quite soon because there's a few things I want to do. It is late here, but I'm multitasking. I'm trying to be productive. Andrew, what are you doing awake so late yourself? I know you're in Birmingham, so do you have a night shift, or do you, like myself, are you just a night owl? It's easy to get wrapped around the big cities as they feature heavily in the movies. Yeah, absolutely. So if that would be another kind of task, like what films have a city. Oh, I can. We could get started on that one as well. What films have a city in the name? Let's see. Let's see. Philadelphia with Tom Hanks. The Philadelphia Story with Catherine Hepburn, I think it was. No, Deborah Kerr and James Stewart, I think. Uh, let's see. Last Tango in Paris. Um, Chicago, the musical. Um, Shanghai. It's a espionage thriller with John Cusack and Gong Li. Um, yeah, there's bound to be a lot of films that have a city in the name somewhere. London Town or Pool of London. It's an old film from the 40s. I know that in one of the Bond films, it was the big one, Skyfall. The Mexican government actually paid the producers. This is an interesting bit of film trivia. Apparently, they paid the producers more just to get 5 more minutes of footage of Mexico City, because that square in Mexico City that's used in the film when Bond's having the fight in the helicopter. Apparently, it's one of the biggest squares in the world of its kind, and the national flag in that square, I understand, is the biggest national flag in the world, or flag of any kind. Although the French, I think, made one for the Olympic presentation from a handover from Tokyo, so that might have broken the record. But I do know that that flag in Mexico City is massive. Most countries will sort of have a regular sized flag, but that one is particularly big. Um, I mean, it's not like Mexico City is unheard of. It certainly didn't need the exposure. It's been in many films, probably. Although I think it is the first time it's been in a Bond film. Good scene, though. Good opening scene if you've seen Skyfall. Was it Sky? I think it was either Skyfall or Spectre. Might have been Spectre, actually. Just trying to think. I know my Bond films, but yeah, that might have been Spectre, actually. 2015. Goodness, I can't remember the opening of Skyfall. That's just, I mean, I've seen all the Bond films several times. I really should remember that. Um, that's the thing. Talking of locations with new Bond films, there's many parts of the world they haven't featured. And the whole point of Bond is it's supposed to be exciting, and there's always meant to be exotic locations. But there are some places that haven't been featured in a Bond film. Um, I might actually watch The Living Daylights tonight. I mean, I don't think it's the best by any means, but it's set in Afghanistan, and with current events, it's kind of topical. Partly Afghanistan and partly Karachi, Pakistan. Um, I don't think it was as good as License to Kill, but anyway. Okay, guys, I'm going to round this up because, like I say, there are things I need to do. If you have any parting questions or points, far away. But I think that's an interesting thing. If you're ever struggling for party games, there's one. Name songs with cities in the title, or films, movies with cities featured. Um, I know there's bound to be other film title. Casablanca, of course, Casablanca. There was actually a film at the same time called Algiers, which was another spy espionage film, but it's not as famous. Okay, so stay central. Thank you. Yeah, I will do. Okay, guys, look after yourselves, and for next time, um, for England, James. Yes, that great Sean Bean line. By the way, that dam apparently is quite famous. I think it got damaged later on, somewhere in Switzerland, I believe. The famous dam that was used in GoldenEye. Bit of trivia about GoldenEye. I knew a guy that was in St. Petersburg at the time when they were filming that tank scene, and it's quite a famous scene, of course. They shut down half the city to film that. Okay, speak to you guys later. I don't know when I'll do the next live stream, but I'm pleased that I've had anyone. Honestly, I thought I'd have to cancel this one. So thank you very much for tuning in. And until next time, take care. Take care, guys.